Um, Hello, I'm Sarah Beischlein. My hometown is Whitehaven. I live now in Hazleton, and I am a physical therapist assistant for a nursing home in Mountaintop.
Kathy?
Hi, my name is Kathleen Golden. I'm nonpartisan. I'm retired military. I now work part-time for Gertrude Hawk and spend in a non-paying job at the VA as a volunteer.
Yes. Ed?
My name is Edward Payne. I live in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. I'm a psychotherapist. Before that, I ran a drug and alcohol center in Greater Hazleton for about 35 years and spent most of my career in social work.
Frank?
My name is Fran Spencer. I live in Nanticoke. I'm retired from the post office. I have 8 grandchildren, and that's where I spend most of my time. I shuffling grandchildren from here to there, but I absolutely love it. And I take piano lessons. I'm not really very good at it. I love it. I love it.
So I guess the first question I want to ask everybody is, we'll go left to right and then we'll mix it up after.
Okay.
But, and don't be afraid to, chime in if you have something you want to add. But just in a word or a phrase, what would be the main issue that will be on your mind when you cast your votes on November 8th? So, Sarah?
I think the main issue would be abortion rights.
Okay. Kathy?
I concur, abortion rights.
Okay.
I'm looking for balance in approach on the multiple issues. The things have become so fractured. So I'll be looking for a lot of things, and abortion is one of those areas of my concern, along with economy, environment, and several others.
Fran?
I would say the most important thing for me would be the economy, immigration, second, and I would have to say civility, the return to civility, and who is showing me the most civility in this.
I concur with her also.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the civility issue first, because that kind of came up with, I think when you talked about balance, Ed, maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, it was that.
So I take it that you feel there's a lack of civility in our politics nationally, locally, state?
And you can, like, for me, a global yes to all of that. The one side or the other, all for us, all against us. Who said that? A Republican? No, I'm not going to vote for it. Who said that? A Democrat? No, I'm not going to vote for it. The issues seem less important than what's your party affiliation, and the majority of political advertising is he sucks, vote for me. This damaging, who could say the worst things about their opponent as a means of attracting another voter. You don't have to be good. That person just has to be worse.
Yeah, that character assassination doesn't sell me. Negativity doesn't sell me. It's just, it really shows me what kind of character what your character is like, that you're going to attack and just be so negative. And so, yeah, I don't like these political ads back and forth.
Does anybody feel, it sounds to me like you're kind of saying a pox on both sides. You don't see this as one party more than the other?
I do.
Okay, well, tell us, Kathy.
And I'm seeing that the negativity is coming from people not running for office, but representatives and senators who are just spewing this venom, negativity.
Good word.
And I see it more on the Republican side.
I feel like it's an equal opportunity thing. If I could judge by the unsolicited text messages that I've been receiving from both political parties, the mailings that are landing in my mailbox, I would say it's 50-50 for me, my experience.
But if I looked at, I have a stack, and
So you've got data.
She has receipts.
and it's the vitriol is more on the right,
Coming
Then-
from the Republicans?
coming from,
Oh, okay.
and just I don't understand a lot of it though. Why they put themselves in that position?
Well, let's talk a little. I know someone mentioned the economy, and I think polls would kind of say that that's the main issue for a lot of people. Can you talk a little bit about how maybe inflation or the current economy has it made you change things, the way you live or what you buy? Has that had a big effect on you, or is it going to affect the way you vote?
General opinion is if people are looking for simple answers, what's wrong and who do you blame for it? Whereas this is an issue that's very dynamic. I mean, the old phrase, the world is flat, and what happens, I mean, I swear, the chairman of the Fed burps, and the stock market goes down 200 points because it's just so volatile. Yes, everything has gotten absurdly expensive. And maybe we could work medication costs in here as well as a topic. And certainly that's affecting everybody from unaffordable rents to making a choice between what foods and what meds you buy. But it is such a dynamic environment that we can't ignore what's going on in Ukraine as in terms of how it affects things and what happens with China. And now there's a turmoil because, hey, we're going to open up the largest semiprocessor thing here. And things ripple and resonate, and it's not the ability to say, see, that's what's wrong.
Yeah.
Now, Fran, you're retired from the post office.
Mhm.
I know we hear from a lot of readers who are retired, so I guess they're seeing a big Social Security increase now. I mean, does the economy affect you also?
I've already figured out that the increase that I'm going to get is pretty much wiped out. It's pretty much going to be wiped out because of the inflation factor. If we're going to get an increase of, I believe it is 8.7%, and the inflation is hovering around that same number, I'm still going to have to economize. I'm grateful. I'm very, very grateful to have had the job that I did have, so I could relax more now as a retiree. However, there are some decisions that I have to make, and I have to make some concessions. I would love to flood my grandchildren with all kinds of goodies. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. But I have to think now that it costs me $58 to fill up my car, and it's these are factors, and I'm not the only one. Everyone is feeling that pinch, and you feel if you pay attention to the when you go grocery shopping, and I'm the one who does the grocery shopping, so I think now of different brands that I have to buy or stay away from, and I can't buy some of my favorite things, but I'm still grateful, and I'm extremely grateful to God that that I'm comfortable enough that, even if I don't make these choices, that's okay. That's okay. But there are a lot of people who cannot make that choice.
Now, I know abortion came up for at least 3 or 4 of you. Someone address that? I know it's always on the list of things in the polls that people are thinking about. But, you know, where does it rank for you folks, and where do you come down on it? I mean, how does that affect what you're going to do when you go in the voting booth, if they still have voting booths?
Well, I'm going to be starting Social Security next December. And out of their mouths, speaking in speeches, the Republicans want to do away with or reduce Social Security. And that is going to upset me a little bit, to include Medicare also. And that I need to, and they seem to all be following in line behind this single thing. They don't seem to have any self-proclamations as, no, I am not going to vote for reducing Social Security or Medicare. They all fall in line.
So let's now bounce to the abortion question. Sarah, I think you said that was your first priority.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So the way that I vote for certain elected officials, the abortion issue does weigh very heavily on me. I'm a born-again Christian, and so I value life in all of its forms, and I do believe that while the baby is still growing inside the mother, that it is life. And so I'll be voting in that way for certain elected positions. Others, you know, maybe I would swing Democrat because of the position that they hold. So that is very important to me. I believe very strongly about that. But there was a time in my life when I didn't believe that way. I've had quite a past, and so but as I'm you know, growing in my faith, I definitely believe that there is life growing inside the mother, and I do not agree that it should be snuffed out for, you know, for reasons that people give. And so, well, that's my opinion.
Have you heard of the breath of life in the very first chapter of the Bible?
No.
I am also sharing Sarah's, that I am strongly pro-life. My wife is in fact the president of Pennsylvanians for Human Life in southern Luzerne County, and she's also executive director of an organization called The Voice of John. As a young nurse, brand new, only 22 years old, many years ago, we're both 71. She was working in a hospital in Georgia and was cleaning an OB after a delivery and hears a whimpering sound in a storage closet. So she opens up the door, she was making sound, thinking a cat or something had gotten in there. There was a child on the shelf, dirty shelf. So she picks up the baby, wraps it, and runs to the nurse's station. So this baby is, and was addressed very firmly by the doctor, saying, "That's an abortion, put it back." You know? And she argued some more and went to others and was firmly dressed down and said, "That's an abortion, put it back." So she went back to the room. She used the waters from the prostaglandin abortion that was done, baptized the child, and said, "I baptize you, John, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And then she said, "I will be your voice." And so from that day to this, that has been her mission and mine. That life is there, and I cannot fathom the breathing child left on a shelf saying, "That's an abortion, put it back."
Now that's
Now, I take
cruel.
it, Kathy, that you have a different take.
I'm pro-choice, and decisions need to be between physicians and the women. There are so many things that can contribute. All these babies being born, but nobody wants to feed them. Nobody wants to take care of them. Nobody wants to. And going back to the very first page in the Bible, it speaks about the breath of life. It's not a soul, does not have a soul, nothing until they come out and breathe.
Well, then that abortion that I just described is a murder.
That's what I said, that was cruel. That, I don't understand how that.
Well, by that definition, what I just described to you is true. Is a
Yes.
murder. And there are many such.
Did they take that baby and kill it?
They allowed she held the child for 20 minutes until he died in her arms.
Fran, I know you didn't weigh in on this, perhaps you want to, or maybe you don't.
This is an amazing discussion, because I am pro-life, but I do not live under a rock. Okay, I understand that there are situations, but I heard someone say, actually it was a pastor, Jason Whitlock, who had, I don't know if he coined this or not, but he said, if you do not have respect for what is in your womb, then you probably will not have respect for it outside the womb. And to me, that was very profound, very profound. And having lost a baby, I can tell you, I can only speak for myself, that 35 years and I still celebrate his birthday. I still celebrate his birthday. So, is that the reason why I am so profoundly pro-life? I don't know. I can only speak for myself. I do understand that there are conditions. I have someone very close to me who was in a situation where their girlfriend had gotten pregnant at the age of 15, and they discussed it. And they said, no, this is not, we will work it out, And that individual is a doctor today.
Yes.
Okay, so those are just little, I don't know, you may not, I have people in my family who are very, I'm not allowed to say pro-choice, they are very, and they will be voting according to their feelings. And regardless of who the candidate is and whether he is not a good candidate, but because he believes in that, they will vote for him regardless of what his other issues are. They're going to go ahead and I mean, I was disappointed when I heard it, but I thought there are many people like that who are very pro-choice, and they will take that individual. They will take that individual, and regardless of crime and everything else, they will.
And likewise, when and however we feel about this, okay, one candidate for governor is saying I'm pro-life, whatever, who is also an election denier and considers that the entire thing was a fraud, and would say yes, I can choose electors if I wanted to, which was the whole point. Was in January 6th down in Washington, may not have stormed into the Capitol building, and so that's why I said, okay, hey, I'm pro-life. I've also got a few screws loose. And so this is where it gets to be this kind of conundrum.
Let's follow that thread then. Because that's another issue.
Wait a second. I want to.
I'm sorry.
I want to tell you why I am pro-choice. In 1980, I was stationed in Randolph Air Force Base, Texas. I was having kidney problems. I've lost a kidney. But they were doing a procedure called IVPs, intravenous pyelograms, which is a radioactive materials going through my bloodstream. At one of those, and I had 2 of them done, on the second one, they found out I was pregnant. 4 doctors told me, you cannot have that baby because of the radioactive material that. So, in 1980, March of 1980, I had an abortion due to medical reasons, and I will follow a doctor's reasoning before anyone else's. Being in the medical field, there are certain doctors that are quacks, but
Well, those are all very powerful stories. I'd like to thank you all for sharing those with us. That is something. We could probably spend an hour alone on abortion, obviously.
Big issue.
Big issue. It's a big issue, obviously, for everyone. But I want to return to Ed's talking about another issue, which is the question of whether you call it election integrity or election denial. I take it that Ed feels that those who kind of deny the 2020 results are off base.
There has been, it certainly has never been more examined election. It has lost in every single court except one. Former president was trumpeting the Supreme Court until they refused to hear an appeal from Texas, at which point they all became immediately gutless cowards, was the next words out. And it's subverting the will of the people, to not allow it to stand after it's been decided. I thought Al Gore, those of you who remember it, handled it in a fairly classy way. Yes, it was a 5-4 Supreme Court decision. It was 5 conservative versus 4 liberal justices, but that night he went on television and said about George H.W. Bush, said, "He is my president. He is my president." And that was classy. And that has just gone by the wayside, and to the point of I will do whatever is necessary to get Trump's endorsement so that I can further my career, my political career, is just mind-numbing to me.
Does anybody here kind of have questions about how our elections are run, or feel that 2020 was not legit? Sarah?
I trust the process. I'm independent. I do tend to lean Republican, but I didn't have any suspicions or anything. I trusted what the findings were, what the court rulings were. So I agree with Mr. Payne.
I don't understand why it should have to be so complicated. There are different countries that will have paper ballots. France, for one thing, will have paper ballots. People present their ID, they submit their ballot, the next day they're counted, and the third day they have a winner. So, I don't know, could we not have something that is less complicated and less suspicious. I mean, I like to follow. I like to follow what happens as the results of the elections, and they're pulling these trays from underneath the table and say, "See, they were hidden." I mean, how do you prevent this from happening? Can it not be less complicated?
Are you talking about the one?
I'm talking about all the things that happened at the 2020 election, and the fact that they would not allow people to watch what was going on, and they found military ballots in the garbage. And what is going on? Can it not be less complicated? I don't know. I have nothing to do with it. I get emails about volunteering. No, thank you. No, thank you. I mean, I have a lot of questions as to why it is done the way it is done in this country. You would think that it would be less complicated.
It only became complicated in 2020.
You know what?
Well, no, were you
Your
around for the
lipstick
chads? The chads in
Oh,
Florida?
here we go.
The chads.
Hanging
The
chat.
chads.
Is that the 2000?
That was
Those
in
George.
two,
No, that was the Gore.
that was the Gore Bush.
Gore Bush.
Gore Bush. And you had individuals who were holding up the chads to the light. Give me a break.
Cross-eyed.
You know,
it's a
cross-eyed,
beautiful
and those
picture.
were the hanging chads. Why? And it hasn't really, I don't think it has improved that much. Here we are in 2022, and you know, we're not that far from hanging chads.
But
So-
you know, in every city and municipality that is conducting these election processes, every place has officials, has people that are there for the same reason, to make sure that the election proceeds as it should, and so I personally, as a busy person in a family and worker and everything that I do, I don't pretend to know all of the details of what happened in all of these different places. The media, the way the media sways things with their biases, you really don't know what to believe when you're reading things on major news outlets. You don't know. It's crazy, I think, with the way this news skews things. So, but I do trust the courts, because at the courts they were presented with a whole lot of evidence, and so that's what I trust, because I don't know all of the things that happened. I wasn't there, and I know that just as a citizen here in Luzerne County, I don't have all the facts at my disposal, but the courts were presented, and then based on all of that evidence, they made their ruling that it was legal. So I'm good with that.
Do we have any male voters here? Does anybody here vote by mail? Or-
No.
No?
I did during
Through COVID.
I
during
did in the
COVID.
I did as
military,
well.
but
Oh, in
yeah.
the military, yeah.
So you don't see any issues with that system?
No.
No, and I don't know why they had such a problem with the mail-in votes. It's been going on for years.
I don't know that problem was proven with the mail-in votes.
No, it wasn't.
And that
That-
wasn't a thing. And my despair right now is some states restricting how votes can be cast is going to impact certain populations
Yes.
Yes.
more strongly than another, and have a way then of swinging an election. Pennsylvania had one of the most absurd gerrymandered, the voting districts or the legislative districts. The one down near Philadelphia, they said it looks like Donald Duck because it had gone into this little. You remember that? That was kind of the comparison.
I remember that.
But it's, and none of this, really, all of this onset of the questions of paper ballots and the like is in the wake of they stole the election from me. all of this. I mean, yes, there have been questions back and forth, but nothing of this magnitude.
Okay. I think someone mentioned immigration as.
I did.
Can
I
you,
did.
can you elaborate on that for us?
Yes, my father was an immigrant from Argentina, and I know there is a process that you have to go through, and I do not understand how and why. Not that the country cannot absorb these people, because they can. I feel that they can absorb all these people. But we have to know who is coming in. They've already found that some of these people are coming from Yemen, Oman, and do they have the best intentions? And I understand, having gone to my father's country, I understand. I totally understand why they would want to come here. My father had the presence of mind in 1923 to leave all of his family, and he had many brothers, and he said, I know that America could give me a much better life. I could start. And I understand that. I understand that, and I would be welcoming if they dropped, people at my house. I have a big house. I welcome anyone, but we have to know there has to be a better process, because that's what I really am afraid without that process, because I've seen what it has done to countries like Sweden, countries like France, where they had opened their borders, and now they have what they call no-go zones, where the police are not allowed to go to certain areas, because they're just not allowed. They have so many of those immigrants, and they demand that they not go there. And I don't remember what year it was where they had the terrorist attack, probably about 8-10 years ago in France.
Yes.
There was over 100, I think. There were many people that were killed, and it's frightening. As a matter of fact, it was at a newspaper, and it's a frightening thing that when you are that welcoming, you're also very vulnerable. You're vulnerable to different things, and that frightens me, because there should be a better process. And my understanding is that there are thousands and thousands of people, and we really need to know who they are, and the process that they need to go through to become citizens. And it's a long process to become a citizen.
Yeah,
So,
years.
Years. It takes years.
I think so many negative things happen in our country to people who enter the country illegally, and also to our society when it's not done the proper way. Social services are taxed. Meaning they're burdened, with all these requests for aid and assistance for people who are undocumented and in the country illegally. And also they're being on the fringes of society. They themselves are so much more at risk for being involved with drugs and alcohol, either through addiction or becoming involved in selling drugs and being a part of that black market kind of thing. Also, human trafficking is huge, and with people who aren't a part of our societal fabric, but like on the outskirts, they're at so much more risk. Women, of course, but men too. And it's really...
And the children.
And the children, of course. Yep, one of the most vulnerable populations. Mm-hmm.
As a social worker, I have great compassion at the level of the individual who needs the help, and then obviously the desperation. As a citizen, pretty much where Fran is and Sarah, there has to be a process that is held to, and so that it can be done in an orderly fashion. The idea of, okay, let's just open the borders to everybody who wants to come in. It's a funny thing. I had an employee, Cecilia Rigo, from Colombia, and she's an American citizen, naturalized American citizen. And when she went back to her country to visit family, it was, you stand in the back of this line. This is for our citizens first. Now she's native of, but you don't get the same treatment when you're not a citizen of another country. She said, "Here I am, a native of it, and I'm sorry, but I'm in last place here," and she accepted that. The border between Haiti, there's a border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. You're not going to find the border lifted so that Haitians could flee the potentially most corrupt government on earth in order to seek. Obviously, the Dominicanos. Fled to the United States for a better life. Certainly in Hazleton, where I'm from, is now about 75% Latino, and of those, the largest group are Dominican. But the idea, you're not going to see in the Dominican Republic, let's just open the border and let these poor starving people away from the corrupt government. There is a border. Actually, I learned that from a patient of mine who's Dominican, because he was talking about the inequity of treating people from different countries differently. There were 2 Egyptian students who didn't arrive where they were supposed to. This is going back several years. And the whole country was like, all the alert was from all the federal agencies, where are these 2 guys? They ended up in Disneyland. They weren't where they were supposed to be. But it was because of their country of origin and their religion, and gee, who knows if whether or not they're terrorists. So we're not doing an equitably administered system here at all. And so some, like I said, structure, some administration, and some consistency has to be part of this.
This has been, immigration has been on the table for
Years.
decades.
Yeah.
It seems an intractable problem. I mean, what needs to happen to get Washington to finally address this issue and perhaps set up a much better workable system?
It's going to have to be in cooperation with other countries. It cannot just be plopped within the confines of the contiguous 48 states. This is a global issue. It's going to have to take some global solutions. I mean, that people are fleeing Africa and willing to risk their lives in overcrowded boats that consistently overturn and drown children and everyone on them, says the desperation of some individuals to flee from the absolute misery in which they live. And I look at a lot of what's coming up from the South is exactly that. The murder rates, especially in Mexico, where some towns are completely controlled by drug lords, and the parents don't want their children exposed to it. So this is H.L. Mencken, for every problem there's a solution, logical, simple, and wrong. This is going to take a number of concerns working together if it's to be addressed in any fashion, so that it be improved. I don't know that you cure the system, but it can't stay this train wreck that it is right now.
Maybe we'll move on to somewhat what some people might say is a related issue, and that's crime. There are arguments that illegal immigration contributes to crime. We don't have to discuss that or decide that here, but has crime affected you in your own neighborhoods in the last couple of years? I know there's been a lot of talk of at least an increase in murders in several places. Do you feel like crime is increasing where you live?
I do. In the Hazleton area, I think it's increased tremendously, and I think there's definitely a correlation between the drug trade. You know, where there's demand, and so that's what brings in the supply, and then it becomes a vicious cycle. So yes, crime related to that lifestyle, that doing things illegally to support, feed those addictions, etc. But we also are friends, my family is friends with the family of the 17-year-old who was murdered in Hazleton.
On
a
South
few
Wyoming
months-
Street?
No, in Drums.
In Drums.
In
okay.
Drums,
Right,
the
I don't, okay,
cheerleader.
yeah, her.
So, and you know, that was an individual who had moved from New Jersey, I understand, and so wasn't from this area, but you know, there was that lifestyle. So, yes, I would say right on my street, I have not experienced it, but just being up current on the local news, etc. So, yes.
Obviously, crime is an issue. It's really being, if you listen to a lot of Republican candidates on all levels, it's really an issue that they've latched onto. Do you folks feel that one party or another is more effective on crime, or would that affect how you might vote in November?
I think everyone has always, I'll get tough on crime, I'll clear our streets. I mean, I don't know how old that is. And you don't get elected by saying, I'm going to put these drug dealers in rehab, or these drug users in rehab and help them to get a better life. You know, that's not going to work. I announced I was from Hazleton. I actually do live in Drums now. But one reason I asked about Wyoming Street, there have been a number of shootings. I lived on Wyoming Street. And so there was a murder just up the street of a young man named Stanley, who was an athlete in Hazleton Area School. And then down where there was Sand Springs, I think, where the girl was murdered. And so, you know, me calling in gunshots in the middle of the night to the police got to be, well, along with everybody else, fairly routine. And at one time, we're talking about drugs, there were at one time, not anymore, but there were 5 active national gangs in Hazleton, it was the year we had the most murders. But we had, you know, Crips, Bloods, Trinitarios, Latin Kings, and MS-13, all in this little town of 27,000 people. And it was because it was a good distribution point, a good distribution hub, and it just brought people in. Most of the crime is drug related now. So.
Kathy, you live in Wilkes-Barre. I know there was that recent incident up at the high school where some people identified as gang members were arrested. Do you feel crime has increased in Wilkes-Barre, or do you feel safe in Wilkes-Barre?
I live in Wilkes-Barre. I grew up in Plymouth Township and graduated from Nanticoke. The crime has increased somewhat. I don't know, really cannot pinpoint a reason why, but why do they say that the highest crime rates are in Republican-run states?
I haven't heard that.
It's,
Do they say that?
Familiar with
yes, and I don't know really which ones are Republican-run states. I mean, I do, but my whole family is Republican. I was told by a sibling that if it became a civil war, they would shoot me.
Oh,
a sibling. And
who in particular would you?
a sibling.
Oh my.
And I just don't understand their perspective other than guns and more guns and more guns without having any background checks and I have a thing with the AR-15s. I was in the military for 20 years.
Mhm.
AR-15 should not be on our streets.
Well, that's where I was just going to pivot. You folks are very good at it. Finding the ways these issues kind of tie together. So, anybody else feel strongly? Do we have any Second Amendment? People here, or what do you feel about gun control and how guns are regulated right now?
I think it's people that kill other people. So I have a lot of hunters in my family, and my stepson is 15. He's been taught how to use a gun in a safe way, rifle, shotgun, since he was very young.
Me too.
There's no allure with it. It's a tool used for hunting, and so we're very comfortable with that. So I think that everybody should be able to have a gun, use it for self-defense.
What are your feelings on the AR?
The AR-15s though.
They're not used for hunting.
They're not used for hunting, but
Unless you want to blow apart.
the way this world is going, like maybe every family should have one, because you never know what's going on with this world. That's a joke.
The idea of an AR-15 was
is
designed,
used for killing people.
that was made to kill another human being.
Mhm.
I have hunters in my family.
Me too.
I enjoy marksmanship. I have no difficulty with someone, possessing it. Yeah, but part of it is, again, this dichotomous thinking. If I want to buy Sudafed, okay, I have to show them my driver's license. I have to sign the little thing that I'm not going to make meth out of it. And I know it's on the record, but just I keep signing Walter White, just waiting for them to catch me. But if I have to swipe ID to buy Sudafed or certain other things, is there anything wrong with me presenting an ID to purchase ammunition when someone's got thousands of rounds? This most recent school shooting where the shooter was killed after murdering 2 people, he had 700 rounds with him for the AR-15. That we're going about this in a crazy fashion. I have no difficulty with firearms, except something like assault weapons that were designed for the specific purpose of killing another human being on the streets. They have with law enforcement they have a place, with the military they have a place. They certainly do not, and you look at all of the mass shootings, it's not even front page news in some places anymore, but we've had several every week. And that is the most common weapon being used in them.
But help me to understand what would come of simply registering to buy ammunition, because sure, okay, they can give their driver's license, and then, but what's done
And you're right,
after
Sarah.
that?
Sarah, you're
Then
right.
they're
To a certain
home.
extent, that's just
Then
very
they're home
simple.
with all the ammo.
It's to certain extent that's simplistic, and I'm going to grant you that. It's just that when a shooter, let's say in Las Vegas, with a bump stock, which was initially argued, no, leave it alone by the NRA, and then no, let's get rid of it, is in a hotel room with semi-automatic, but with a bump stock that turns it into full automatic. And in his home, there are thousands and thousands of rounds, like 5,000 or more rounds of ammunition that you can purchase online and just build a giant stockpile of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything wrong with hey, Ed has just bought, Sudafed in 5 different pharmacies. I'm going to be flagged immediately because it's swiped every time. Buy the ammunition.
Yeah.
I have no trouble with it. But if I see somebody or that someone pops up that someone is buying, thousands upon thousands of rounds,
Yeah. That's
by
a
all
good
means,
point.
buy them.
Yeah. But we're going to be watching you.
But we're gonna know you have those. And
Yeah.
if you're straw buying for someone else, that's
Yeah.
like straw buying a gun.
Okay.
So, while it may seem simplistic, you're
Yeah.
never in terms of gun
I see your
control,
point.
you're not going to get the guns off the street.
Yeah, I see your
In terms of
point.
ammunition control, or at least ammunition awareness, I think that might be a novel approach to say, hi, I've got a 19-year-old kid who just got shot in a school where I think where was it, Cincinnati, Cleveland?
St. Louis, I think.
Was
Was it St. Louis?
St. Louis, yeah, and with an AR-15 and with 700 rounds with him. That's insane. And at least if someone knows we've got one person buying a massive amount of ammunition for one particular type rifle that they may have, and my eyebrows might want to go up and say, could you explain,
Are you doing it?
all right, so.
It's
Sorry.
funny, we've gone all the way around, but no one has mentioned anything about mental health.
And that's my field.
And that's his field.
Yeah.
And that's his field. And when you brought up I don't remember who brought up the AR-15 initially, what would prevent or what would possess a mother to give her teenage child the guns to go to a school?
You talking about Sandy?
That just happened, yeah.
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook.
Yes.
Okay. Now, could that have been prevented? Could that have been prevented?
I'm not a doctor.
Well,
I did say
okay.
Holiday Inn Express.
You just,
Well,
Holiday Inn Express,
Well,
okay.
you're
Kill
right.
his mother.
Okay.
Well, that just happened.
On a related topic, how do you folks feel about red flag laws? I know this new federal law kind of encourages states to at least look at those. Do you think Pennsylvania should consider a red flag law?
Could you tell me a little
Give a
bit,
bit more
to
background.
elaborate that?
If someone fears that someone they know in their family has a firearm and may be planning to use it to hurt themselves or someone else, can contact police, and then the guns will be confiscated, so there could be like a court hearing on whether that person should have those guns.
Yes.
I think that's a great
Yeah.
idea
That occurs
because
now. Yes.
our state, for instance, has that 302
Right.
situation where if a family or friend feels that a person is a danger to themselves or others, they can be institutionalized
It's
and
an involuntary
voluntary.
evaluation
Right.
for 72 hours.
So I think, for what you just described, that yes,
Dave, would there be a penalty for not, like
you don't report it.
for not reporting? When you're saying red flag laws, is that like?
I'm
The
not
Good
sure that
Samaritan.
the states that have them do that. I think it's more, it's not like a mandatory reporting thing like
Right.
you might have with
Yes.
Child abuse.
child abuse
Yeah.
cases, right? So, I know when we started this, we said, we want to focus mostly on issues, but we're getting up to an hour, so maybe we'll do a lightning round and move from issues to personalities. And
But can we talk a little bit about medications and the cost of medications in this country, which is also a big thing. It was just in a news article. The cost of insulin in the United States for a month is around $100 for the average brand out there. you can cross the border into Canada to get the same medication made by the same manufacturer for $20 a month. In the United States, hepatitis C was at one time not treatable. It is now treatable, 1 pill a day for 89 days, and the cost is about $90,000. In Egypt, okay, the cost is $40, and not per day. It's $40 for the entire course of treatment from the same manufacturer.
Oh my goodness.
And they covered it by, we will cover your cost of manufacture plus a reasonable profit. And that is how they do it.
Didn't they just pass that law on prescription drugs?
There are some laws, but it's a sad moment in a little community outside of Hazleton where they had a nice memorial celebration for a musician who died because he was diabetic and he could not afford his insulin. He died of the complications of the disease. EpiPens, okay, that were very inexpensive at one time until some snot-nosed kid bought the patent and increased it 5,000% and made it impossible to get here. And so this is criminal, and the lobby industry for the major pharmaceuticals is huge. It is powerful. It's got very deep pockets, and it will do what it must to persuade. But it does cost lives. I mean, the idea that practically $1,000 a pill to treat hepatitis C, and I can go to another country and get the course of treatment for $40 from the same manufacturer. They know you cannot import drugs from Canada, even though they're from the same manufacturer, because it hasn't gotten through our FDA approval. That was a recent reason given by a senator, who, not surprisingly, I assume, was taking money from Big Pharma. And so this is another crisis in this country. And mental health we can talk about if you wanted to. But the prisons are the new mental health centers. And I'll have to shut up in just a minute, but you're talking about the 302. If someone is 302, which is an involuntary evaluation, functionally it's swearing out a warrant to take the person to have them evaluated, it is not uncommon, let's say in Hazleton, for someone to be spending almost all of those 72 hours in the emergency room while they look for a bed. And it is not uncommon to hear that. We found one in Altoona. That was a recent one, where by the time they had gotten out there, the 72 hours had expired and the person left. Or Philadelphia, where they'd be like scrambling for a bed. And that's why that's utterly shocked to hear that community counseling here is closing. That First Hospital has closed.
Yes. Yeah. That was.
And so the prisons are now the mental health centers. And it's beyond, I have no words, no words you want to print for a country that will allow this to occur. I'll shut up for a while.
Well, Bill, because I really want to kind of move into the final kind of things I want to ask, so I'd like to keep it at about an hour. I'm sure this has been a great session. You've all been very thoughtful, and I thank you. But I want to talk about, this is a midterm election, though there's been a lot of talk about the presidency, maybe this presidency and the former presidency. How are your views about Joe Biden or Donald Trump going to affect how you vote on November 8th? Will they?
I'll start. I don't think that my views on them will affect it at all. I'm just looking at the candidates now and voting just whether or not they're aligning with what my values are. So it's not even a thought, those guys.
That's Fran?
I would have to say that I'm very disappointed in Joe Biden because I had put a lot of stock in his inauguration speech. And when he said he was going to bring the country together, I thought, yes, finally, someone is going to bring the country together. And we've never been further apart. We've never been further apart. And I just don't understand. He seems to be greatly influenced by a certain progressive group, and it just doesn't make any sense to me, because I understand that, you know, a lot of people, you know, have very strong opinions about Donald Trump, but some things that he did while he was president were actually very good. I thought they were very.
Could you tell me what they were?
I thought they were very good.
Well, tell
The
me.
Abraham Accord. The Abraham Accord, for one thing.
What is the
The
Abraham?
Abraham Accord opened up trade between some of the Arab countries and Israel, and I thought that was wonderful. And I think his son-in-law had a lot to do with that. And our president now came in, and I don't know if you had seen what he had done in the very first day of office. He had a stack of executive orders, and he canceled everything that
The
Donald Trump
pipeline,
did.
I didn't appreciate that.
Yes. Am I right, Sarah?
I didn't like the pipeline thing, that's all I'm saying.
The pipeline, okay? The
Now we have
pipeline.
gas
Why
prices.
would you purposely close our energy independence by closing leases, pipelines, I forget
Are you talking about the pipeline that was to
from
come down?
Alaska, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know that oil was not for us? Had nothing to do with us. We were just going to have it go down to the coast and get on ships.
But there's a moratorium with the leases. He will not allow us to, because he wants to move away from fossil fuels. They want to move, and yes, I understand. Everyone wants clean energy. I do. I have grandchildren. I want clean air, clean resources, but we're just not ready for it. Why make us suffer right now?
Well, aren't we suffering with the climate and all the flooding?
Are you going to get India, Pakistan, and China on board with what we are going to have to sacrifice with? I don't think so. They are still firing up coal. And they will probably fire up coal for infinity. And we're the ones that are going to have to. I would love to see an EV, electric vehicle, in one of Pennsylvania's wonderful winter storms on 81, stuck in Hazelton. I'm sorry, I just get it. Okay, am I right?
I never thought of that.
Yeah, no, because
Hazelton,
they
you're
just, at this point, they cannot handle it. After the hurricane in Florida, they found that a lot of the EVs were catching on fire. They were catching on fire. The salt water getting underneath the batteries, they were catching on fire. Not only that, how long is it going to take to charge up your EV at night? Oh, I forgot eggs. Sorry. You're going to have to wait 4 more hours before you can get back in that car and go get your eggs. Am I being ridiculous? I mean, that's just part of it. I get it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just get fired up.
Okay.
Lightning round for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay,
That's a
we're
lot.
ready for
That's
the
a
lightning round.
lot. Yeah.
And the
We
lightning
use
hit
just
I'm
start.
just going to throw out names,
Okay.
and you can just react to them. John Fetterman.
Oh,
Not capable.
empathy.
Sorry. I feel very, very sorry for him.
There are other congressmen who have had strokes,
Yes.
and they're still in office.
But why will he not release his medical records?
Because they're private. I wouldn't release my medical records either.
Okay.
And I
think we deserve to know
I work in
whether
the
this man
hospital.
is capable. I've taken care of an individual, my mother, who had a stroke. It's a long, long road. But I want someone who is on top of their game to be my senator. Sorry. I'm sorry. I feel sorry for him, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, if leaving state of health out of it for the moment, I mean, I likened the election of Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump to a choice of being poisoned or shot. And I'm kind of,
That's not.
well, and I'm kind of looking on this as the same thing. I'm not doing cartwheels
For the
in
TV
the public
guy.
square in terms of the capability or what I've seen from either. I mean, there's a certain amount of carpetbagger in me thinking of the Dr. Oz. But on the other side of this thing, I've not really heard anything substantive and deep thought out from Fetterman to convince me that he's the person. So it's stroke and the medical issues aside.
Mehmet Oz.
I'm sorry?
I'm throwing out the name Mehmet Oz.
Oh, maybe not.
Suspicious. I'm rather suspicious. And what was his motivation? What was his motivation? Because he certainly doesn't need the money. Doesn't need the money. Why would he do it? And does abortion have anything to do with it? Do you think that? I don't know. Would he?
I don't know either. He doesn't. It's not like
I
he's
don't
lived
know.
a life of public service. He's had a job being a TV personality. I mean, he had his career as a doctor. Okay, of course, first and foremost, and then many years on television. But I don't know. I'm just uninformed. I'm ignorant if he ever shared his reasoning about why he stepped
probably
up
never will
to the plate.
But that's why
Just
I'm
curious.
suspicious. I'm very curious as to why he would. I don't know.
But he stepped up. Somebody stepped up, and these are our guys. And
Carpetbagger, if you just want one word. So
Do you
that's mine.
Both Mr. Trump and Mehmet Oz were pro-choice before they became pro-life. So
There are
Sure.
a lot of politicians. You could probably find videos 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and get the result that you want. And if I had a nickel for every politician that flip-flopped on that flip-flop,
because if you're going to title yourself as one or the other, then you've got to, get in line with what those issues are. So, yeah, that's.
How about Doug Mastriano?
he's a little weird.
I don't know that much.
have a lot
I
to say.
haven't really done a lot of, research.
I haven't seen a lot of the evil back and forth that Fetterman and Oz have done. So, I don't really have too much to say on that.
Josh Shapiro.
I think he's a good guy. I think he's done a lot with his current career.
It's interesting that you both know
think
an
he's-
awful lot about the Fetterman-Oz race.
I think he's a very capable individual. I'm troubled, obviously, by the adamant pro-choice stance. And, I like a conservative court, but I'm a social worker. I want things that go out there. I think he's certainly shown capability. His prosecutorial ability is second to none. The pro-choice stance troubles me greatly. So it's kind of like, for me, mixed reviews.
I'm very troubled with the late-term abortion.
Very.
Very much. And one image that just stuck in my head was when they passed that law in the New York legislature in Albany, New York. Those people stood up and they cheered. And it broke my heart. It did. It broke my heart because I cannot imagine that people are capable of that, and then you have so many people who are capable of that. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but late-term abortions normally aren't, oh, I want to have an abortion right now. It's normally for a cause.
But that it is legal, and in California, and it has been passed in several areas, there will be no investigations of, they're extending this into the postnatal period of the first month. So that if a child dies in the first month, it's not going to be, let's say, it was, in a normal SIDS case, there would be an autopsy to determine. They are stopping that legislatively and proclaiming it. That's not going to be allowed now.
What?
That if a child dies within that first period, first 28-day period, postpartum period,
Oh, postpartum, okay.
that the child born alive, taken home, dies within that month, there will be no autopsy, there will be no investigation, and it is codified in the law. And now my part of me wants to scream, you mean you're not going to check for a shaken baby, you're not going to check for bruises, but this is, yes, it's, if you know, this kind of benignly neglecting a child to death. The case of John, the DC-5, where you saw, you know, 5 babies, there were hundreds, but the one box of 5, one doctor, prompting one doctor to say this child belongs in a NIC unit, not in a box. That there are the willingness to allow a child to expire from neglect. In the trial of Goddard in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia,
Yeah.
he said that the baby was so big that he could have walked to the bus station, and it didn't bother him. Didn't bother him.
No, it didn't. But during his trial, they interviewed another doctor and said, "How many abortions have you done?" And he had said about 60,000. They asked, "What happens if the child happens to be born alive?" And he said, "We basically keep the child comfortable until it passes, because it does happen." And so this, you know, this is a very horrific situation. I apologize. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I get very adamant about that.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming and meeting with us today. It was a really thoughtful discussion, and
Let's do this again.
When do you think it will be broadcast? Broadcast, but put up on your website.
A week from Sunday, the Sunday
Okay.
before the election.
Okay, great.
So it gives us time to
Edit
and
there's a lot of stuff here.
have Sean work his
It's
magic.
almost like a therapy
But I
session.
really want to thank you, because it wasn't just
I'm the
some of the
underdog.
personal stories that you share with us were very compelling. So thank you all.